Reused villains, heroes reduced to parodies of themselves, lightsaber fights that feel like two aging baby boomers hitting each other with canes at a senior center. These are just a few of the reasons why the Star Wars Sequel Trilogy regularly comes in last on popularity polls among fans. But while yes, episodes 7 through 9 are far from perfect, and I'm in no way trying to say they don't deserve criticism, in my opinion, they receive too much hate. In this video, I'd like to explore what they got right, because completely disregarding the Star Wars Sequel Trilogy comes with a risk. We could lose out on some fun ideas that'd be awesome to see more of in future movies. It's also a disservice too. A disservice to the writers, actors, and countless crew members who poured years of their energy into creating these cinematic experiences. We owe it to them to acknowledge what worked. To start, we'll begin with a film set 30 years after the original trilogy that first introduced us to the somewhat dysfunctional Skywalker family. For audiences, it was the first Star Wars movie in a decade, and it had the task of reawakening interest in the franchise while introducing it to a new generation of viewers, some who'd never even seen Star Wars before. How did it do? Well, here's how it made history. Back in 2015, the Star Wars fan base was a lot more unified than it is today regarding which movies were good and which were bad. The original trilogy? Good. Unanimously praised as a quintessential masterpiece of cinema, an inspiring epic about a farm boy turned rebellious fighter against an evil galactic empire, who also overcomes his daddy issues. But the prequel trilogy? The 3 movies set before the originals exploring their backstory? Bad. Very, very bad. Favorite topics of criticism were actor Hayden Christensen's at times wooden line delivery, and Jar Jar Binks' annoying shenanigans, or creator George Lucas's dialogue, which more often than not came off less like Shakespeare and more like C-3PO's impression of what Shakespeare would write.
I don't like sand.
Now, I want to stress, these were the common opinions at the time. In the past 20 years, the children who had those prequel movies be their introduction to Star Wars have grown up, and they've lent their opinions to the online community. These days, the prequel trilogy is held in much higher regard than it used to be. Even I'm one of those people that actually likes some of them. In fact, for me, Revenge of the Sith is tied with The Empire Strikes Back as my favorite Star Wars movie of all time. It's got the greatest lightsaber duel ever that 20 years after its release still hasn't been topped in terms of spectacle. The villains also win, which I like, and I don't know what that says about me, but it's part of the reason. But in 2015, the new upcoming Star Wars movie, The Force Awakens, was set 30 years after the original trilogy, featuring classic characters from that era like Han Solo and Princess Leia, so there was a lot of worry. It was trying to appeal to the very fans that had checked out after watching Anakin and his soon-to-be wife Padme Amidala romantically flirt with each other by pretending to be dead. The Force Awakens needed to get them excited for the franchise again. It needed to win over audiences that felt like they hadn't seen a good Star Wars movie since 1983. If it failed, then the $4 billion Disney had paid for the rights might as well have been ground through a cheese grater and sprinkled over a ballpark hot dog as a substitute for pickle relish. And when it came out, the movie didn't just do well, it was a box office smash, raking in $2 billion, becoming not just the highest grossing film of the year, but of the entire film franchise. Audiences and critics found themselves on the same side. The Force Awakens wasn't just good, it was great. The thing everyone was talking about and you just had to see. One guy got so passionate he made a custom bumper sticker featuring his favorite scene, just so he could get other fans as hyped as him. But how? What did this movie do? There's never a dull moment. The movie knew its audiences had PTSD from the infamous Senate political debates of the prequel movies. Yes, they're important to the plot, but captivating to watch, they are not. Just take a look at The Force Awakens' very first scene. You've got ships flying out of the sky loaded with troopers, lights flickering inside as the electrical power activates, and this visual momentum is kept by rolling to the perspective of a little robot named BB-8. It then jets toward the first protagonist we meet, Poe Dameron, all in a matter of seconds. It's smooth, it's quick, it's glossy. It's efficient in quickly setting up the scene. Even the exposition given between the first 2 characters is light and easy to understand. Here's this thing. Awesome, we've been needing this for a long time. Uh-oh, we've got company and they're not here to roast s'mores with us. The whole movie is like this, jumping between action sequences like Yoda in Attack of the Clones. You just don't have time to get bored. You're enthralled for every minute of the adventure. The next point I want to make is how this movie makes use of legacy characters. characters, the old farts returning for another fun romp across the stars. It did something audiences weren't expecting, specifically with Luke Skywalker. He's got a presence in this movie, but it's not a physical one, which is what everyone was expecting, including actor Mark Hamill.
I'll tell you where I thought I came in the forest, when the lightsaber goes like this and flies off. I said, oh, what a great entrance. Rey caught it?
Rather, Luke's presence comes through on the mystery of where he is, the question of what he's been up to for the past 30 years, and the hope we'll see him again. More often than not, movies tend to dangle legacy characters to audience members as a cheap gimmick to keep them interested. One flick, Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom, is massively guilty of this. It took Ian Malcolm, a beloved character with roots in the original Jurassic Park movie, and stuck him in trailers and TV spots. How much actual screen time did he have? About 2 minutes, and none of it impacted anything in the story. In contrast to this, Luke Skywalker wasn't used in teaser trailers, something desperate fans certainly took note of at the time. One even created their own where his likeness was plastered onto every face they could find. It was to the point where fans probably would have been willing to commit crimes for even a single frame of Luke Skywalker's left nostril. But Disney didn't give in. Instead, Luke is just talked about. He's needed for the fight against evil, and this map may lead them to him, and the very existence of this information dramatically affects what characters do. Kylo Ren kills for it, Han Solo tries to give it to the Resistance, which leads him to reuniting with his ex-wife. Rey breaks away to follow the map and see what lies at the end of it, beginning her own path as a Jedi trainee. When Luke finally does show up, it's on the edge of a cliff right before the credits roll. It's a literal cliffhanger to get you excited about the next movie to come. He's not just there to look pretty, he's serving a greater purpose without getting spoiled too quickly. And that's something I'd like to see more of in Star Wars. Past characters not necessarily taking center stage, but the memory of them and what they did being a different kind of presence that shapes the decisions new characters make. It pays homage to the franchise's history without suffocating new faces under a big steaming pile of nostalgia. But The Force Awakens doesn't just build off the legacy of legacy characters, it's also got the courage to kill them off when it wants. For me, this is a huge reason the movie deserves respect because, again, it's a revival, a carefully constructed reintroduction to the franchise. Before The Force Awakens, there hadn't been a Star Wars movie featuring Princess Leia, Luke Skywalker, and Han Solo in 32 years. That's a long time to wait to see your childhood heroes again. If you didn't like the prequels released afterward, then seeing them again probably felt like returning home from a war. To see one die could be downright traumatic. But that's what happens to Han Solo, everyone's favorite smuggler turned war hero who drives the fastest hunk of junk in the galaxy and pals around with Bigfoot. He'd been around since the very first Star Wars movie back in 1977, but not only does he die, he's killed by his own son in a way no one wants to go. Shish kebabbed by a lightsaber. He's also gone forever. It's not like Luke Skywalker or Yoda who pass away then pop up as a Force ghost in the next movie, giving sage advice like a Zoltar fortune-telling machine. It's so long Solo. The director, J.J. Abrams, chose to do it for the sake of giving the movie a sense of cost. Yes, Solo makes a cameo 2 movies later in The Rise of Skywalker, but that's a very special circumstance that doesn't cheapen his death. In fact, I'll talk about some truly incredible creative decisions that movie made in the aftermath of tragedy when I get to it later in this video. But before we do that, I have to talk about the film that takes place in between. A movie that divided the fan base so much, the cracks are arguably still there to this day. Some loved it, some hated it, but I'm going to attempt to find some common ground by talking about what I think everyone should appreciate about Star Wars: The Last Jedi. You know, for being twin siblings, Luke Skywalker and his sister Leia Organa don't really have a lot in common. Luke grew up in poverty, Leia in high society. Luke never has an on-screen love interest. Leia is smitten with Han Solo. Luke's weapon of choice is a laser sword. Leia's is her sassy attitude.
You stuck-up, half-witted, scruffy-looking nerf herder!
In fact, the whole idea of their twin siblings feels a little contrived. Like George Lucas wanted Luke to have a twin sister, but didn't have anyone really set up to do it, so he picked the closest woman in his proximity to take on the role. For better or for worse. The biggest difference, however, is in their connection to the Force. Luke and Leia are supposed to be direct descendants of Anakin Skywalker, one of the most powerful Force users who ever lived, but the only one who really gets a chance to strut his stuff to showcase that he's indeed heir to a powerful lineage is Luke. In the original Star Wars trilogy, Leia doesn't even do so much as lift a rock. But The Last Jedi changes all of this. It's the first movie to really give Leia a chance to shine in her knowledge of the Force, to showcase that she's Luke's equal in terms levels of space wizardiness. Just look at the scene where Leia gets shot at into space, only to zip right out of the void Mary Poppins style. It's really quite something to behold. On top of this, The Last Jedi is the only one of the 3 sequel movies to actually bring the two together so they can share the screen for the first time since Return of the Jedi was released back in 1983. This is important because that's not something that can ever happen again. Carrie Fisher, the actress who plays Leia, passed away in 2016. If it weren't for just one scene in The Last Jedi, the second movie in the sequel trilogy mind you, we wouldn't have been able to see them together at all. While yes, it's not really Luke Skywalker in the flesh, but instead a spiritual projection from across the galaxy, it's still his essence. So far as I'm concerned, he really truly is there. In fact, this leads me towards something else The Last Jedi does that I think should score a few points. Its inventiveness with how the Force can be used. As Obi-Wan Kenobi beautifully articulated in the very first Star Wars movie, the Force is an energy field that binds all living things. It's basically the power of God, and yet more often than not, we see people using this unfathomable source of energy to just push people and make things float. The Last Jedi exercises a little more imagination, showing us that the Force can even be used to project your own consciousness across vast distances, which makes total sense, because if the Force is everything, that means all things are connected through it, and you should most definitely be able to use it as a telephone line to save money on your T-Mobile bill. Even seeing Ghost Yoda raise his little finger to send a lightning bolt into a tree does a better job of visually illustrating this interconnected power the Force facilitates than anything we've seen prior, and it invites a lot of interesting questions. Could you use the Force to make a tsunami? A tornado? Could you essentially become the Avatar? What about animals? If you can use the Force to control someone's mind, could you use it to send a flock of porgs towards your enemy to kill them with cuteness? It's some really interesting ideas that expand upon what the Force can be used for, and that makes Star Wars feel fresh. On the topic of animals, something The Last Jedi also does a fantastic job of is creating some really majestic and visually stunning creatures to feast your eyes on, like the aforementioned porgs, adorable little penguin puffin things that the internet instantly fell in love with when they were briefly revealed through the movie's trailers. Their small size and cute cries make you want one instantly, in a galaxy where, more often than not, the critters are gnarly, ugly looking things. It's pleasant to see something a bit more friendly and cuddly that's not for once Chewbacca. I also gotta give a shout out to the Vulptex, these crystal foxes from the planet Crate that give every Pokemon ever made a run for their money. Where the porgs are cute, these things are just straight up majestic, simply awesome to look at every second they're on screen. I want one, and I don't care if petting its crystalline fur will strip the skin right off my fingertips. Creatures like these do more than flesh out the galaxy, reminding us there's more to it than the Skywalkers' intergenerational soap opera entire planets have been annihilated over. They help give it a beautiful aesthetic. Again, a nice contrast to the more rough and tumble beasts like killer wampas, rancors, and space worms living in asteroids. At the end of the day, that's not something I'd mind more of. And speaking of ends, this brings me to the final of the sequel trilogy movies. What's for many a difficult film to defend, but like the other two in my opinion, isn't without some other redeeming qualities that warrant a second look, like how it handles Carrie Fisher's death. On December 27, 2016, Carrie Fisher unexpectedly passed away at the age of 60. Her career spanned over 40 years, but no role of hers was more favorite than the feisty Princess Leia. With the first two sequel movies focusing on Han Solo and Luke Skywalker respectively, this final one, The Rise of Skywalker, was intended to be her swan song. But with her gone before filming could commence, the movie's creators faced the impossible situation of giving the beloved character a good send-off without an actress to work with, and with controversial methods like digitally recreating her off the table, the team behind things had to get creative if they wanted Princess Leia to be part of the movie at all. Director J.J. Abrams later revealed that unused footage from The Force Awakens would be used to make scenes involving the character. They'd be cut and spliced with new footage to give the illusion Leia was part of the story. It sounds like the sort of thing that could easily get very messy, but the crazy thing is that they actually pulled it off. The scenes including Leia are brief, but because the movie's so fast-paced, it does an excellent job masking their brevity, and while the body doubles for more plot-specific scenes clearly hide Leia's face, it makes for a dramatic composition that reflects the seriousness of the situation at hand. In order to reach her son, Kylo Ren, and turn him fully back to the good side, Leia must sacrifice herself to project an image of his father, Han Solo, to him across the galaxy. This is where Han Solo returns, not as himself, but as Leia manifesting as him. It's why seeing him again not only doesn't cheapen Solo's death, but makes for a powerful moment where Kylo Ren chooses the light instead of the dark, mirroring the same standoff that happened in The Force Awakens, just with the outcome reversed this time. Honestly, I'd go so far as to say that if I wasn't aware of Carrie Fisher's passing before the film's production, I don't know if I've noticed these changes they'd made to work around things. It all fits well, giving Leia an honorable conclusion to her character, and that's an enormous feat to pull off. Now, another classic character that gets a send-off in this movie, or should I say his second send-off, is the monstrous Emperor Palpatine. He's always been the puppet master behind the scenes, pulling the strings, trying to shape the galaxy's destiny in a way that's not fun for anyone but him. Last we saw Palps, however, he was getting chucked down a chute and exploding in 1983, so to see him pop up again in this movie with essentially no explanation was a little bit of a surprise to a lot of fans. Some might say it was a cheap tactic to drum up hype for the movie, but regardless of how you feel about the fact that somehow Palpatine returned, you've got to admit that the guy who plays him, Ian McDiarmid, does a simply fantastic job of portraying the guy. The creepy voice, the haunting presence it exudes, the sheer evil he's able to convey by so much as a single stare. It's all there, baby. I especially enjoy him in his first scene, when Kylo Ren discovers him in this weakened, decrepit state where he's just this reanimated corpse pumped full of chemicals. Blind, strengthless, his fingers aren't even there. It's the closest Star Wars has ever come to horror. I also just love this thing he's strung up on that's pumping the guy with whatever he needs to just barely stay alive. It looks as cobbled together as he does. Wires hanging out of it, kinda mangled in shape, a single flip of the wrong switch away from blowing up. It's a great visual indicator of the lengths he's gone to stay alive, but it's also a bit karmic, because if you recall, Palpatine had a certain apprentice of his own that also required life support systems to survive. That's a motif in Star Wars that has its roots back in George Lucas himself. He's claimed the movies are like poetry in that they rhyme. Which brings me to the last thing I feel The Rise of Skywalker does right. Unlike my last points, I feel like this one is the riskiest to talk about. The one most likely to make my comment section get so bombarded with hateful messages it'd come to resemble the lava planet Mustafar. But I'm gonna argue for it anyway, and it's this. At the movie's end, Rey is asked who she is. Now at this point she's been revealed to be a descendant of the Emperor, her bloodline steeped in the dark side. Her name should be Rey Palpatine, but instead of answering with this, Rey says that she's a Skywalker, and in the distance we see the Force ghosts of Luke and Leia watching on while she claims this. Now why do I think this storytelling beat warrants respect? Because it doesn't just close out her character arc, it gracefully ties this movie, the last in the Skywalker saga, to all the others that came before. What's Star Wars all about? Well, when I watch these movies, I come away with a specific idea. It goes all the way back to that first film directed by George Lucas back in 1977, to when Luke Skywalker found himself staring at the twin suns in the distance, contemplating what the future might bring. And the idea I sense, the core theme I feel, is this. Your destiny is ready when you are. You just have to make the choice to pursue it. In the prequels, Anakin Skywalker faced a decision. He could stay in the Jedi Order despite his dissatisfaction, fulfilling an ancient prophecy that someone would come along to bring balance to the Force by vanquishing the evil Sith. Or he could betray them, turning to the dark side in a vain attempt to save what he thought he was going to lose, his wife, and at that same time, give in to his own vanity by pursuing stronger abilities than he ever thought he could have achieved through the Jedi. And as we all know, Anakin chooses to turn to the dark side, becoming the terrifyingly evil Darth Vader. But it's also his decision to turn back to the light, which he does, throwing Emperor Palpatine down a tube, bringing balance to the Force. It was seeing his son in pain that did it, of realizing that his continued allegiance to the dark side is what was going to cause him to lose his family all over again. Anakin's destiny was always there, he just had to choose to embrace it. Luke Skywalker faces a fork in the road too. In Return of the Jedi, he briefly gives into his rage, defeating his father in a lightsaber duel and faced with a proposal by the Emperor to take his place at his side. Luke could take the job offer, benefits and all, becoming a mirror image of his father, but he chooses not to stay in the light, to reflect not Darth Vader, but the Jedi Anakin Skywalker was before he turned and the good he represented. 30 years later, in The Last Jedi, Luke faces yet another decision. He can either remain on the island he's exiled himself to out of his shame of betraying Kylo Ren, or he can stand against him one last time, alongside people who believe that he's still a hero, a force for good in a galaxy constantly battling darkness, which in the end he ends up choosing to do. So for Rey, a direct descendant of the evil Palpatine, to choose not to embrace her lineage and instead consider herself a Skywalker completely adheres to this overarching theme. The Skywalkers were the ones who were there for her, nurturing her abilities, teaching Rey the ways of the Force. In a way, they were the parents she never had. To take their name and continue their legacy legacy and honor of them makes sense as a path forward, because embracing Palpatine would be like pretending none of it ever happened. Rey's free will is stronger than blood. Her destiny, like all destinies to be the next Skywalker, is ready for her if she is. She just has to make that decision to say the name, which she chooses to. Like Anakin made a choice, like Luke made a choice. Yes, The Rise of Skywalker isn't a perfect movie. Neither are The Last Jedi and The Force Awakens, but they aren't absolute in their shortcomings. The minds behind these movies did present some great ideas and enrich the Star Wars universe, and who knows, perhaps given enough time, the sequels will be held in the same high regard the prequels are today, once those who had these films be their introduction to Star Wars grow up. Rey, Poe, and Finn could be like some people's as Anakin, Obi-Wan, and Padme, just like they were the equivalent to others as Han, Leia, and Luke. To them, The Rise of Skywalker could be the most awesome thing ever, and that's great because their interest keeps the franchise itself alive. It makes it so those powerful themes about choices and destiny and how much stronger we are together can pass on to future generations. Themes that bring so much good into the lives of those who practice them. Themes that, given the problems we face together, are something the world needs to hear. No matter who you are or what your favorite Star Wars movie happens to be, I think we can all agree that's an idea worth some respect.